Good morning, Dr. Brad.
Hello, Curt.
I guess it doesn't announce that we're recording anymore if
That's
you've
kind of
already got the Read AI running. I
that's
can't figure out how to shut off the Zoom AI. So I couldn't do it before we our time this morning. I'll figure out how to shut that off and keep the Read AI because the Zoom AI is useless.
oh my.
I mean,
You shouldn't tell it that. It'll make it feel bad.
well, maybe it'll learn something because I mean, I don't have a lot of hope because given the quality of what it says, what it says it claims it understands about the conversation one's holding, it doesn't seem to have a very good grasp of understanding. I mean, if you and I say something profoundly simple, it seems to get that, but otherwise it's just hallucinating. I'm like, we didn't say that. No, we would never say that. That
It's
makes no sense.
pre-associating.
Oh, damn it. So anyway, what we're just talking about, I said I wanted to capture it. You brought up a point and I was trying to expound on it.
Okay. We were
Uh,
talking about the schism that's occurred with the rise of militant Islam in the West.
and I said, yeah, it surprises me that the Jews have always favored the left because they perceive the conservatives as the enemy instead of the conservatives as the container within which they could have their silly ideas and their separatism and their silly ideas. That's the right. Just like we men are the container within which women can have their separatism, meaning irresponsibility for the commons, and silly ideas. And it just seemed odd to me that that now that it's visible that that container exists,
Okay.
what's going to happen to the Jewish community and their reframing, which comes into this. It's a good piece I ran across. I haven't finished yet. Past couple of days. It's on my other laptop. It says, "Do we?" It's by who's that guy? Desert Kaiser Buch. Kaiser Buch. I don't know if he's German or not. It's Kaiser Buch. If it's German, and if it's Kaiser Bush, if it's anglicized, I don't know what it is. Bush. And so anyway, he's one of those guys that's trying to riff off of what occultists sort of, were framework, and he's doing a pretty good job. Anyway, he's trying to say, is it true that people need adversity in order to stay healthy? Right? Of course, the
Hmm.
answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Well, I always say, well, there's a reason where we have immorality, and so that we maintain morality. Right? There's a reason that, and then I can't remember who said it. I quote it all the time. Is it Egasset or Ortega Egasset? And he says, Europeans are only successful when they face a great existential threat to unite them, because otherwise they're individualistic. Well, look at the Jews' perspective. If they see that the Ashkenazis see that it's Europeans that are containing them, right? That they're the threat to their feminine methods. Then, of course, they don't recognize that Europeans might have been, but we also mostly found a place for them. Even the Russians did in the Pale, despite their behavior, which is so the now that the Jews are visible in the world, and the real problem, of course, isn't us; it's the Muslims who are who actually the whole world's problem. The fact that they've created this division really only provides the clarity that helps the Jews do what I've said for a long time needs to happen, is they need to have a reformation. So maybe they'll have a bit of reform. I don't hold out hope because metaphysical presumptions and group strategies are very difficult to alter, but obviously this should be enough to cause at least some consideration. You're never going to have women stop rebelling against men, and you're never going to have the Ashkenazi or the Jews, the Muslims, stop rebelling against Europeans and Asians. It's just never going to happen, or anybody else for that matter, because we're all falsification. Our existence and our superiority, frankly, is a falsification of their entire existence, their entire group strategy, their entire mythos. And we have the science to explain why they fail, which is that they're the lowest trust people we have outside of Africa. And Africa isn't, you can't really qualify it as a low trust people because there's no institution that has unified them yet, right? They've never had their imperial.
To be lost.
What?
There's no trust
to be lost. Whereas in the Middle East, I mean, their trustless, their untrustworthiness is, is ancient. And it's what do you say when it's pre-ancient? Because we say the ancient world, we tend to mean the world after the Bronze Age collapse, right? But we need a word for because there's a really big difference between the Bronze Age collapse and it's archaic is probably the right word. So it's the archaic. So the reputation for the Middle East being the land of liars is archaic.
It's interesting. It goes to this. The trust appears to be positively correlated with commons and capital.
Commons, capital, and because what you're trying to do is scale cooperation to produce either private capital commons. But when the next band of gangsters is going to come back and steal it from you anyway, right? And that's a continually rotating process. Or when your entire history is based on a vast peasantry and a small military, this is really this is slave morality, right? It's women morality, slave morality, which is that they have such a long history of this. Of course they're going to be, they're going to still maintain that metaphysical set of presumptions. And so they're going to only trust to family and clans, supposedly.
Yeah.
And their commons is only going to extend to their tribe, because everyone else is just as much a thief as they are. So you get the basic difference between Semitic civilization and Western, is that we presume that that we don't own things and that it's a property of the commons. And so they presume that if they don't steal it first, somebody else will.
There's it's said to be a parable is, if I don't take it, somebody else will take it.
Yes.
And it's like, that's what Soros said about when he was working with the Nazis to take Jewish properties. And it was, it's just, okay. And you just kind of go like this, okay. But that philosophy is hard to defeat, because it's like, it's self-serving and it's not trustworthy. You can't trust it.
It basically means that you're a defector or treason, and basically an admission of treason, right? That's what it is. You're admitting treason. I'm like, okay, well, I can't remember who I was having this conversation with. It was a very long time ago. And the Jewish ethic is that if it only takes two people to trade, that sounds so nice, doesn't it?
Very libertarian, right?
Yeah, except that it doesn't. What it's really saying is something else. Is that externalities don't matter.
Right.
And the second thing it's saying is that if we do the trade now, that's enough. There's no going back. There's no
further. There's no
restitution. Nothing.
They said it when I was a child playing tag, blackjack, no take back.
Yes. And so the next thing they do is because of that, they can bait into hazard. And so, which is what,
that's your fault for trusting me.
That's your fault for trusting me. And so you get the Russian, which is the Jewish, Muslim, Russian ethics is who's the person who's guilty, the liar or the person who believes them. Well, in the West, it's the liar because that's a statement of the commons, whereas in the Orient and in Russia, it's the person who believes the lie because it's a statement of the private, right? The lack of trust to high trust society. So, the whole, we always say that morality is built largely of what you choose not to do. And we always want to make it the positive things you do, charity, and also it's actually, in order to get to the things that are positive, you have to eliminate all the things that are negative. And all those negative things are things largely we choose not to do. And every time we choose not to do them, we're actually contributing to the commons, right?
Right. So there's a moral issue here, which is quite interesting because it's like morality then is what you do not do.
Correct.
And it is the abuse of morality that is the problem.
Yes.
Which is
most of our work, the via negativa. I know, go ahead. I've interrupted you. Sorry.
It's all that's right. It goes to the Gnostics because the Gnostics are the Gnostic statement is the word of God was sent by the true God, which is unethical, to enslave the people with morality.
Say that again.
The word of God, the demiurge, was sent by the true God, who's unethical, to enslave the people with morality. And it's the sorcerer's job to summon the demons and take advantage of the situation. Which in the demons are the impulsivity of the moral population. Under cover of morality, they're going to take advantage of you.
That's right. Now, let me run with that because I always like to tie it back. Is that what's the first myth that's Western? The first Western myth is what we call Faust, but it's really the devil and the blacksmith, right? Or the demon and the blacksmith, because we had no concept of a devil. But what is the demon doing? He's baiting the blacksmith into hazard. And the trick is that the European tricks the devil by welding him to the anvil, right? And so our primary mythological difference between the Middle East is the prohibition against baiting into hazard and their use of baiting into hazard.
Well, the sorcerer's job is anti-moral. Because good is bad and bad is good. So he inverted the morality for his own purposes.
So you're saying that, okay, I'm just fucking around. So you're saying that the God of the Semites is actually the devil?
I did not say that.
But I think that's what
I am not saying that.
Are you sure
I did not say that.
You didn't? Nope. You didn't say that?
Nope, I did not. And it's like this, because like what I said, and this is I said something.
Dude, I actually got a reaction out of Brad. You see how hard that is to do? You got
like that. I'll shake it off. It's okay. That's not what I said, and it's okay because I will explain this at our meeting that's coming up in just short days, like 5 days. We're going to be meeting
in 5 days. Yes, we are.
And it's like that's going to be up in north of Boston. If anybody's interested, you can check it out at the Natural Law Institute website, right?
Yep. So there's a banner on our website. It points to the registration. So we're good.
Got some interesting pushback this week too on the Twitter feeds. It's just like you these people that they make noises that don't mean anything, that are critical,
yes,
but not productive. And you tolerate it better than I do. I don't like it very much. I'm like, what a goofball.
Well, I'm not angry anymore, so I can sort of.
I want you to know I got credits from my friend, the Bernie Sanders friend. Okay. He talked to me. I talked to him on the phone like 3 times in the last week. And it's like yesterday I talked to him and he's like, you've changed a lot. You've mellowed out a lot. And I said, yeah, that's because I know how to articulate what I'm talking about. And I have faith that we're going to achieve the goals we're setting forth to achieve. So there's no need for irritability, because it doesn't help anything. It's just passions are not useful. This is not a passion play. This is just science. And that's all right. But the fact that he recognized it was interesting. I said, I've been studying this for a long time, and it's soothed my nerves. And that's okay. Because it's a very the circumstances are very troubling, because part of the baiting into hazard process is to cause you to do something that is against your better interests.
That's right.
And it's like, because you get taken advantage of by passion.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to rile you up and take advantage of your passion for something that isn't real.
That's right.
And so it's like being riled up is the opposite of the right answer.
That's right.
So you dispense justice indiscriminately and dispassionately, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's why justice is blind, right?
Right. So anyway, I liked that little arc there.
I thought
That was quite good, because this whole aristocracy top down trying to reproduce trust, and peasantry bottom up, or slave morality bottom up, trying to prevent basically oppression, produces two very opposite a very opposite set of ethics for your people to deal with. I don't think we study this stuff well enough, right? I mean, I don't, until you have, I think Rushton talked about it a little bit. Certainly Fukuyama wrote a whole book on it, but the understanding that, trust is really the measure of your ability to cooperate at scale. That's because right. It determines the scale of your cooperation. And then the second thing that happens is our awareness that we worked on justification when we were working with human organizations at scales of perception. But then the whole world flipped in the 1800s or 1800s, when all of a sudden we were dealing with everything from the physical world to the economic to the political, the geostrategic world that was beyond our scale of perception. We had to have instruments to perceive it.
Right, it's superhuman.
Right, and so when we did that, we moved from justification because we had little information, to falsification, we had none. And I think I know that one of the problems in my earliest drafts was trying to explain to people just how important this shift was. For us, we all take it for granted. We just say positiva and negativa, right? And we understand that you sort of have this natural competition between the positiva and negativa, and that's what allows you to make discoveries.
Right.
And so just as we were saying this earlier, is that do groups need hostiles in order to evolve? And it turns out they do. We all want peace, but we actually need competitors.
It has to be a polarity, right, in order to create a new agreement.
Equilibrium.
Two distributions, right?
Right. That's the same thing between the sexes. We're actually quite, it's contrary to what the left would like us to think, we're actually quite opposite. And anything that matters, right? And why is because it allows us to compute a compromise that covers time and space. Now, why would you why would you think that would involve? Well, the universe is stupid. What is it trying to do? It's trying to find a compromise between time and space, right? So why wouldn't that manifest in human behavior? I mean, it does manifest in human behavior. Why does it manifest so clearly in human behavior versus all other? Well, because we can predict, because we have these big fucking organs on our top of our bodies, right? That are prediction engines. So we can predict a broader spectrum of things. And so humans having the sexes on one direction and the classes on the other, that just means we cover more surface area of time and space without paying the real cost of trying. In other words, the nature has to, nature, for evolution to work, things have to die and not reproduce. For us, we just have to see success and failure and pursue the successes, right? And eliminate the failures. And so it's much cheaper, even though the brains are expensive. The brains are very expensive. It's actually cheaper in time and over time if you have a brain than it is to rely on evolution. So we evolve faster. I mean, and so, people, it's like you were saying that. We just explained right there, right? We just explained most of the universe, right? I mean, in that little,
pretty much all of it.
right? I mean, it's really that simple. And yet we get pushback from people when we make some argument that some seventh iteration variation from this, because we're working with the intersection of three core principles that are all trifunctional, and it's like it has to fucking be this way because the universe can't do anything else, and we wouldn't survive in that universe as part of that universe if we didn't do it. And they argue with us. I'm like, no, it's not. I don't know why I mean, it's because they don't know, right? I mean, they have no. It's like,
but we got to go back to the Hebrew, right? It's resistance. It's just resistance because they don't want to do the work necessary to understand, or they haven't put in the work necessary to understand, so they're not properly capitalized to operate in this plane.
it's sort of weird, like the progressives, there's these psycho chicks, right?
Okay.
They're actually breeding themselves out of existence,
Yes.
right? And the conservatives are breeding themselves into persistence. And so I was like, when I was saying this, I'm like, oh, we can rely on this process to continue indefinitely, right? I mean, it'll still continue to work as long as we separate, right? The problem is that we're trying to capitalize and they're trying to steal, right? And so
there's an article that Brian Bray gave me. He turned me on to this author named Fred Harrison, who's an economist. And he goes, what they did was, this is quite interesting, about the late 1890s, late 19th century then, Harrison says that they changed the definition of economic terms, specifically capital and land. They changed the definitional terms, and so he's advocating for a modification of the strategy by which governments raise funds by taxing land and not taxing labor. And I'm like, that makes all the sense.
Well, that's a Georgist.
Yes, it is. And so he wrote some books, and I have ordered them, and they're on the way. And it's like, I look forward to hearing it. I listened to him talk in at least 3 interviews, and the argument made a great deal of sense to me. And so I'm like, I'll review that one and process it through this lens, because it's public versus private capitalization. He's talking about the commons, funding the commons. And this argument I heard before from the Reformation, or the Protestant Reformation. So the English figured out how to steal the commons.
Say that again?
The English figured out how to steal the commons from the church, is what was stated. And I don't remember who posited that.
I'm not.
They privatized the church commons.
Well, right, but the church was trying to be a state within a state, the same way Google, Facebook, Twitter were, that whole
Right. So it's like so then you could look at England if they did that, say they privatized, they gave to the lords what was the churches. So it was privatized, but then it was reconstituted the arrangement of capital inside the nation,
Mhm.
and it's an intermediate state because it's unstable. Because
Well, I
we
mean,
have,
what are we saying we're gonna do? I mean, we're doing the same thing, right?
I'd say so, and it's like
I mean, that's what the Romans did. If you have a rise of a state within a state,
you have to
eventually
match it.
well,
You can't have it.
you can't have it. Because what you have is then a group of people that's unaccountable, the interests of the people, yet like women or Jews within the male structure, they become really successful parasites because they're taking all the profits that are produced by that commons and privatizing them, not all of them, but a substantial number of those profits. Despite the fact that they're not paying for the commons that make those the profits they're generating possible. That was a really profound thing. I hope that made sense. Did that come across as making sense?
I understood it. So I regard it as so from the Protestant Reformation, the rise of commerce capitalism, right?
Mhm.
And then the subsequent development, and this is an interesting arc, is the development of commerce capitalism to mercantilism, which ran the course of opportunities. Then we developed the corporate capitalism, which developed into monopoly capitalism, where we're stuck now, still.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why that. I know what you're saying, and I agree. Why is it that this term, the problem the term capitalism bothers me, is because it's just rule of law.
Right, but it's the law is not complete is the issue. The law,
Correct.
the
Correct.
failure of the law to regulate the capital properly is why we're in the conflict we're in today, is because the capital is not being properly managed.
Correct.
And the managers have an interest in maintaining the situation as it is because they're running the show and they're in charge and they get the lion's share of it. Which is power. And so it's just we're advocating for a renewal of the law because to regulate the misbehavior of those with the capital. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That's how I see it. And it's like, it's not hard. And it's just like, oh, that's okay. That's a reformation of the capital system. That's part of it, which is the rule of law. So it's legal regulation needs to be properly reimposed to limit feminine misbehavior in that marketplace.
Yes.
How boring.
Well, it's like a lot of the stuff we do, right? I mean, we're sitting here working through we're working through a series.
No, we're working through everything.
Right, and we're showing that it's all how simple it all is. But people don't have that advantage that we do. And so, it's logical that they would think that. But I mean, we went through this with the Flynn effect, which is two-dimensional, right? At the bottom, it's if you have some really people who are not smart because they had food deficiencies or whatever, or diseases when they were very young, that skews the data downward. When you start educating people so that they understand general rules, a small number of general rules, i.e. science, instead of a vast number of idiosyncratic rules, like, you have the idea that God intends something, so that the purpose of the crow is whatever. It's not systematic. You can't systematize.
That's right.
So we see as everybody got smarter by quite a bit. Did they get smarter? They just had fewer errors. The biological component, in other words, their capacity was the same, but their demonstrated competency was much higher.
Right.
So we move two variables, we get the fill-in effect. Well, as you can see, look how calm you and I are once we, well, you had to beat a little bit of it out of me, but more than a little. You had to beat a lot of it out of me. But I'm never going to get tired of saying that. Because it's true and I got to face it.
I'm just it's me beating you out of Curt. This is for the audience, okay? It's like this. It's like, well, I just hold my tongue with all due respect to our dear friend in Texas, Uncle Kenny. I hold my tongue as best I can, and I'll wait because Curt will figure it out. He's going to process the information and prove it's correct in his mind, and then he'll agree. He'll understand.
You suck. Anyway.
I'll just wait another 6 months. It's fine.
You're just water on a rock. Anyway, what the fuck was I just saying?
Flynn effect.
The Flynn effect. So, you know, our work is the same.
It's interesting because it is, and then I would say this is the same advantage from my own perspective of having learned the science as I have, is you don't think of the wrong thoughts that slow you down.
Oh, that's really smart, Brad. That's so
like a via negativa, because it's like I know the shortcuts because I've been down this road, and it's like, yeah, that's all the other solutions don't make any sense, so it shorts out all their stupid.
I see. Yes, that's really quite good.
Because it's the same as a pathway, right? It's like wayfinding, right?
Yeah, it's wayfinding.
I've been here before. This is just trifunctionalism again. It's this, okay, here we are. I know the answers. It's something like this, and I can put it together.
Yep.
And I'm not any smarter. I just don't make the mistakes because I now know the way.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Jeez, that was brilliant. So I always tie it back to, well, you know, is it to me? Because that's what I do, right? It's just a checklist.
Okay.
I just have a checklist, and any problem, I just run through the checklist. And I do it really fast now because I've done it so many times. But originally I wasn't really that fast at it. I had to think of them, right? But now it's just like, okay, you're hitting this trifunctional rule, you know, or ternary logical rule, and therefore that's explaining it. And over here you're bringing that in, and that hitting that. The competition between these two is yielding that, and that's all it is, right? I mean, it's just nothing. So, but it's just a checklist, right? I mean, that's why it's so useful in court, is because if you can give the court a checklist, right?
It makes it hard to get the wrong answer.
It's very hard to get the wrong answer. so because each step of the checklist eliminates, like you said, all the errors. If you just get let's pick one of the truth, or internal consistency, like logic, or external correspondence. But then you start clicking off those things. Right. Or fully informed, warranted, voluntary transfer, demonstrated interest. I mean, you click off those things, the errors aren't possible anymore.
Right. And it's like, so I was telling my friend this. So he's a lefty by inclination, which is say, because he supported Bernie Sanders, right? And it's like this, but it's like honestly, I say, if you look up at the science that we're studying, you will see it called all kind of right-wing crazy names that are trying to label it as extremist and trying to waylay it on the, put it off the road. And it's like, but really, how can you have a problem with fully informed reciprocal exchange? That nobody is just neutral.
Right. You can't have a problem with it unless you're a bad person. Right. I mean, it's just hard to do that.
Or just plain misled,
yes,
error-ridden bot.
Now, what's the other one? So you have these. How did you say it? Yeah, you were going to the Bernie Sanders thing. The big thing is that they can't systematize at scale. So what they do is they scale the motives at the scale of their perception, when they start to understand that as that whatever they're thinking behavior extends, all of a sudden it's more valuable to defect from that behavior than not. Right? So what you get is equilibration forces. So in markets, if a thing gets too pricey, we find a substitute.
Right.
But in the social terms, that's a defection.
That's right.
Right? That's a defection. So when you see people do these things in social behaviors, it's the economics of behavior. People do this exact same thing. They act in their interests at all times.
Right.
Well, and so at some point, it's just not in my interest to follow this particular strategy.
That's moral outrage, right?
Right. And so when you get, what happens is the left, of course, can't systematize. That's what makes them the same. Is they empathize. So their concept is, their thinking is they're literally blind. They're literally time and distance blind. And so they think of everything as the interpersonal scale. But they're not accounting for the fact of incentives. And so that's why they're always wrong. They're literally always wrong. Every single time.
It's a perfect negative indicator.
It's just, it's like Heinlein said this back, I don't know, in the 60s or 70s, probably the 60s.
Right.
He said, when you want to know how to vote, find a well-meaning fool, ask their opinion, and do the opposite, because that's almost certainly the right answer.
That's just awful.
It's true though.
I know, but it's like, there's got to be a way to make money off that.
George Soros does it every day.
Oh my.
That's his whole philosophy. Fuck, did you see what Elon Musk said about him?
What did he say?
George Soros could only have one motive, and that's to hate mankind.
I did see that, and I was like, okay, I got nothing to say. And it's like, Mark said something similar. And it's just, it's diabolical.
Well, I mean, we know what the feminine mind does, right? It seeks to produce conflict, which causes chaos from which that they can benefit, right?
Okay.
And so that's what he's doing. Musk said it. I think it was Musk said it. I can't know.
Right.
Especially where my mind is right now, I can't isolate it. But I think it was Musk said, well, look, yes, it was Musk. Is that, if you want to buy influence in a presidential election, it's really really profound, expensive. If you want to buy influence in legislation, it's really, really expensive too. I mean, the president's worse, but if you want to buy a governorship, it's still quite expensive.
Okay.
But if you want to buy influence in a prosecutor, it doesn't cost anything. And so what he did was pricing systems with.
Right. What can I afford?
What can I afford? No, I mean, where is the greatest asymmetry of price and value? That's what he does, right? I mean, he's a bad person because he's always betting against something. He's always making an immoral bet. The same problem I had with Nassim Taleb's arguments. And you can only make such immoral bets because this is really profound. It's only possible to have immoral bets of that scale because you're betting within the structure of a high trust society.
Right.
So in other words, does that make sense? You couldn't do it in a low trust society. Right. Because the opportunity wouldn't exist.
That's right.
So what he says is, which Soros just buys the prosecutors, which is the cheapest means of not enforcing law, which maximizes the amount of civil disorder. So he's a seditionist, really. Treason is an enemy. Maybe he's the enemy, but he's a seditionist, and that he's working against the interests of the country. So, I mean, I just cannot understand why this is talking about him as a taboo. I don't even understand it because it's so obvious that he's
there's nothing to understand. It's just there's a reason for it.
Why is why are the news firms so afraid to talk about Soros? And why is the okay, that's right.
How hard was that? Well, it's too easy, man. You're just throwing me meatballs. That was just nothing.
Again, you're one of the great things about working with you is which you brought up in one of our last conversations, was you've read all this conspiracy stuff and whatever, which is really the social view of the mechanisms.
What is it? What it is this is interesting because it's intellect percolating out of the quantum background.
Yep.
Spot something that doesn't want to be talked about. And then their car gets wrecked on the side of the road in the snow. You see them on the ditch and you just drive by, you're like, well, that's a terrible way to do a career.
Yes, yes.
And yes. It's like, but they're morally obligated. This is what's interesting. They're morally obligated to talk about the things they talk about, even to their own detriment. So a virtuous act. And so there's a lot of these guys on the side of the road, and I collect their books because I'm like, these guys are awesome. They talk about something in terms that are inflated, so they're ambiguous and easily waylaid. And I just look at what's the tag on the side of the car. He's a racist. He's an anti-Semite. I mean, they got all kind of names, conspiracy theorists. They got names for them. And it's like, okay, that's the names being projected from the hidden thing in the middle, the occult power.
Yeah, you are the only person that's ever convinced me, and I've become convinced of the merit of such studies. But excuse, I didn't come at it that way. I'm just basically, I mean, think of it as math, right?
I know.
I think of the world. Hold on. I'm trying to explain from the audience because I'm trying to legitimize what you're saying. And so my thing is, I work by what's called the theory of incentives, which is basically behavioral economics.
Yes.
Always and only. Right. And the big thing about our work is it connects physics and behavioral economics.
That's right.
Right. So we have a uniform system of thought across the spectrum from physics to behavioral economics to evolutionary consequences to the grammars and logics we use to explain it, right? So we have a coherent strategy. So the problem is you've actually convinced me that there's merit in this, but it's only because of how you just phrased it. It's actually a moral ambition to draw attention to something, even if all you have available to you
is bad tools, man.
It's bad tools. And I'm like, okay, now that makes all this shit legitimate. So now
you're like this, you're just like this. Now see what I'm trying to do when I read these things, or I review them in my mind, is I go, he's talking about something. Just like Thomas Aquinas was talking about demons. It's like, we don't just throw that out because he was talking about something. He's not stupid. And he spent a lot of effort to say something in as precise of a manner as he could. And it's just because that's all that was available. And it's like, it's crude and it's a wheel. It still rolls.
Why do I have such a problem? Why did I have such a problem with this? When I explained to other kids when I was, quite young. Well, I mean, look at the people who lived in the Middle East. They weren't the Greeks. They didn't have all this tools of reason and testimony and all that stuff. They had only what they did with mythicism. I didn't use these words at the time, but that's what I said. And so they did the best they could with the tools available to them. And I remember telling my sister this when we were going to, of course, we were all in Catholic school.
Right.
And my sister, who's very feminine, flaky in all the good ways, all right, but she's not stupid, right? She's not right.
Right.
And she said, "This, I just can't buy it." And I said, I just explained it to her like that. And I said, "But only if you don't tell anybody, because Mom will get mad at me, right?" And I'm not going to tell. Don't let Mom know I told you this because, right. And it had an effect on her because that's like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. They're not really lying.
No, it's just they're trying to draw arcs so that you can figure it out, how to behave in the world.
and they're
Yeah.
trying to do it with very, I mean, it's like, why did the Greek Aesop use all these animal tales? Because it's simple. We don't think of it that way because we think of it as children's stuff. He didn't mean it that way. When he wrote that stuff, it was meant to be serious philosophy at the time, right?
It was serious philosophy, and it's like we're teaching it. You can teach it to kids.
Right, and it was brilliant for that reason. Why? Because the animals are empathetically and imitatively, because I separate empathy and sympathy, right? As
Yep.
you have physical imitation, emotional empathy, and cognitive sympathy, right? I separate those three things. So the children can do it with the animals and those simple circumstances. So it's a parsimonious, reductive, and easily accessible means. Well, this is why I get pissed off at Peterson. He's like, oh, but he uses all this biblical stuff, and I'm like, dude, it's like 7 layers of abstraction.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't like all the implication of it. But if you're part of that civilization and everything's done in mythicism, it makes perfect sense. I was, who was I talking to? It's like you can write the formula for all of physics like in 4 lines, right, of characters. But I mean, and the problem is it doesn't mean anything when you look at it. You can't, unless you know what those symbols mean. Then if you know what those symbols mean, you have to convert it to English language, which is about that long instead of 4 lines, right? I mean, it's like, right. Even then you're like, okay, well, what the hell does that mean? Those words mean? And you have to take each one of those concepts and write it in I'm closer.
Right. One full screen.
I'm closer to the screen. I fixed the camera so I'm more like your head size. And so so anyway, so you get this stuff where you're like, the how do I say it? It's just we have a different set of thinking and they have a different set of thinking. So their system is older. It's like they have 110 volt, right? Americans have 110 volt and Europeans have 220. What's better? 220 without question. If you ever want to boil water or you want to do anything, have a hair dryer, doesn't make any difference. 220 is way better, right? But we did it first. So we have a less good system. Well, they have religion as their system.
Right.
But what is philosophy? It's the step between religion and science, empiricism at least, right? So that's what they had available to them. And I hate to compliment you, it's like I feel like I do it all the time, and it's so frustrating to tell you you're right all the fucking time. So
I'm humble about it. I really try to be humble about it.
yeah.
Make it so that it's less painful than it is. Then it certainly must be.
So my natural reaction to mythicism or anything that isn't empiricism really is that it's lying. In other words, that's my
the problem of the imprecision. It has potential like that because it allows for. This is why the tribes in the Middle East don't do so well at scale, because it's like, when you say that, I think I know what you're saying, and I may be mistaken. And it's like there's the problem is the local teachings are going to be modified as they change localities, and so that they don't all say the same stories and they don't get the same vector out of it. And so that's why it won't scale. It can't scale because the precision is too low, and it's like the stories are not going to be told uniformly throughout and understood in the same way.
Right. It's a system of measurement with low precision. It doesn't mean it doesn't function as a system of measurement. It just means that deduction, induction, and abduction from it is limited, and this limits progress. I mean, even it's just so stupid. Can I take a tangent on that?
Of course.
So, the problem is this low trust manifests in Islamic law. And Islamic law doesn't tolerate, requires distribution of the parental assets to the children. It doesn't follow primogeniture. It's very hard to keep capital in a family. Very hard to develop wealthy families.
Mm.
Now, what's your incentive? Now, do you try to build corporate? They don't have a corporation. They have basically partnerships. They can't have corporations. Well, corporations, one of the values of corporations is they're durable regardless of who's, like, you can buy me out and continue.
Right.
And then you can sell it to your kids and they can continue. Usually that doesn't work so well, but hey. But anyway, you build these entities, and so you develop the collective means of producing scale. In India, for example, if you're in this particular caste, you do the laundry, right? That's great. That actually does divide the labor up pretty well, but it doesn't allow for too much adaptation. And in Islam, there's nothing, right? And in Europe, there's there's a class system which is just responsibility, and we can adapt all over the place.
Right. It's a job title, not a
right. It's just my current responsibility is this because I'm actually capable of it, right? And so the problem in Islam is that you can't develop any organizations of scale. Now, if they'd had one revolution, one change, so they could develop organizations of scale, maybe they would have developed a majority middle class, and they would have evolved out of fundamentalism. Kind of hard to imagine given their demographics, but I mean, it could have happened in Anatolia among the Ottomans for certain. Mostly, right? They could have had it because they had middle class, but they didn't have a durable middle class, intergenerational. And one of the things we learned about the importance of classes and nobility is that the skill necessary to maintain complex structures is inherited from parent to child. I mean, why am I an entrepreneur? Because every fucking person in my goddamn family history has been an entrepreneur. I mean, I grew up thinking I'm going to run a company, right? I mean, you just grow up. Well, it's expected. It's also what you know,
right.
And it's also a source of pride,
right?
It also you get trained in don't be someone's bitch when you're in that you're an entrepreneur, right? I mean, those families is like, and then the last thing is you see how working people live and are treated, right?
Yeah.
And so you just go into entrepreneurship, or you go into, I mean, that's a funny word, right? But I mean, it's basically you go into running businesses simply because that's what you know how to do and seems like the right thing to do. But you don't even realize you're being programmed with it, with every fucking thing your parents say to you, like every moral bias.
Either.
Sorry?
They don't know they're doing it.
They don't know they're doing it either. Like teaching me about money. I mean, they were really good teaching me about money. I mean, I had a bank savings account, and I learned I made money. I learned about money, but I learned about money in a business, how to treat customers, the problems of inventory, the problems of cash flow, right? The problems of credit. You know all this stuff like when you're 9, right? I mean, it's just so the world makes perfect fucking sense to you when you go out into it. But now what happens if you're working for somebody saying to, we're always oppressed? Yes, we do all the work and they take advantage of us. We don't share in the if you believe all that crap, you're at a tremendous disadvantage in the world. And when they should say to you, well, we sell our labor. We sell our labor until we have enough capital that we can sell this.
Right.
And
that's right.
but so your metaphysics matter. I mean, it's the same thing that I always bitch about in the upper classes, is that they've gotten so used to rent seeking on consumers that they've just said it's a natural thing, or that's how you get a Klaus Schwab. He's like, well, I know how to make the world work so that it's orderly in my sense, and people have less stresses. But he's averaging people out in a way that's actually detrimental to the formation of the very thing he's
Right.
talking about. And it's like, you're supposed to be a smart guy, but obviously you're not. Because you get defection from that. It's like with the one world government people. How crazy is that shit? Why would you think that? I mean, we can't.
The trick is, it's I can think that if I can't imagine a better way for me to get ahead.
Yes.
And it's like, and damn the costs.
Well, I can sell it to other people to associate with me to help me bring it about, when it's all really just self-interest and ignorance. I mean, it's just so weird to me. And I remember I was talking to my political science professor, who I thought was quite good. And I came up after class and I said, people don't act like that. I know, but that's not what the Marxists think. They think people can act like that. And I'm like, but there's no evidence that people like that. That's not how they look at it. They believe people can act like that. And I'm like, I can't imagine thinking that. I'm not my kid, right? I'm like 18
Right.
or 19, right? Right. And I'm like, I can't understand it. And he's like, well, let me. So he sat there and he played the opposite side with me. This is after class, right? I don't understand. It's just, and I was like, well, that's why you can't convince them, because they really do believe people can behave like that. And I'm like, and so it bothered me so much, but I mean, it's just empathizing doesn't scale. It doesn't scale because they don't understand the idea of incentives. They don't understand that people will follow incentives. So they're thinking of incentives at small scale. But whenever you take these incentives at small scale and you scale them up, all of a sudden new incentives emerge. And most of those incentives will form an equilibrium. That's why socialism, socialism always fails. It's because you think people are going to have the shit, but they don't. They maintain self-interest. And moreover, people think, well, I'm moral. Every person is moral within the limits of what he can get away with and the advantages of what he can achieve from that morality. But people are not maximally moral whatsoever. There's no one that is. I mean, I still have to control myself once in a while from obeying driving laws, because I think they're for other people who need them, right? It's not true any longer, but it was true for a long time. I was like, I can't remember. My wife would complain, you don't care about rules. It says rules exist for the people who need them. Right? For those of us who understand, we don't need the rules. We need to simply do the things that don't produce the negative consequences that the rules are intended to produce for people who can't do what I'm doing. Right. And it used to make her so furious. That's just so female a thing. Right. All right.
Makes it more fun to rub her nose in it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my wife's a pretty amazing person, but anyway. So what arc are we on here? We are on the arc of people doing the best they can with the tools of measurement they have.
Right.
And that and the second thing we're on is that what you are saying, and I think is interesting, because I accuse you all the time of being a profoundly moral person.
Yes.
Well, it's an accusation in my
Yes.
You're not laughing at this. I was trying to get a laugh out of you on that one.
Sorry.
But you're a profoundly moral person. And I mean, and your generosity and the scale of your morality, that's just pretty awesome. So when I look at this, I'm like, I'm a moral person, but it's at scale. In other words, I think in systems. So it doesn't occur to, and I kind of dismiss ordinary people, right?
Okay.
And so, but you don't do that. So when you look at all these things, it's sort of like why I like Rudyard so much, is he can step into the mind of people,
Mhm.
common people, at any point in time, in any geography and history.
Hmm.
Well, you're actually really good at the same thing, which is stepping into the minds of people in this mortal context at different points that you've reached, and it's very interesting to me. And I actually, it's teaching me a lot of, it taught me a lot about myself, and that, okay, what is the difference that I do? I mean, interpersonally, I speak to people with kindness, all right? But I mean, whatever it is, they call it, you're not nice, you're kind, is what they say. So I'm kind to people, right? But it's because I treat them like children, right? And so, isn't that horrible? And, it's just true, because I think of them as children. So, I mean, I don't think of them literally as children, but my approach to them is children. And so when I look at the world of this stuff, I never think about taking seriously those people that you've read these conspiracy theories of. I'm just looking for the
Oh.
incentives that create all this stuff. And so what you've done is you've taught me to appreciate that that point of view, and you've taught me I know this word is scary, it's not usually in my vocabulary, humility
Mm.
of doing so, and then the empathy of saying, well, it's the best they could do.
It's just what it's bad tools, man. And it's like, so that's what we do. We make and sell tools. And that's what, and they're better than all the other tools, and that's the answer.
Which is cool.
It is cool. Because it's like, look, it's like the assembly of information that I had went through to get here, which is chaotic. But it turns into, oh, I know how to make it make sense now that I have the tools that can draw out the chaos. It just is orderly in its own fashion, and it's just, I can explain the order, which is no small feat.
And so it produces mindfulness, right?
I don't know. That word is a very strange word to me. I'm like, okay, like
It's
it makes
it means that you understand the world and you have control over your emotions as a consequence.
right. So it's like I would get frustrated if I could not explain something to somebody that was coming from these sources, because there's too many wild shots coming out of there, so they can't read it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, my esteemed father, he can't tolerate it, because he can't accept the imprecision of it causes him to derail.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, you can't, so I don't try. I tried a little bit, but I'm like, okay, that's not worthy of the effort.
The same argument I tell the conservatives: if you're going to make an argument, don't use something like COVID or whatever. Try to pick one that isn't in the current contention, right? Pick something else, because then it's harder to dismiss you. So, when I see a lot of guys keep tying stuff, I mean, the crypto guys drive me nuts, right? The COVID guys don't necessarily drive me nuts because they're mostly right? But it doesn't, but pick or the immigration issue, whatever. If you're trying to talk about that issue, that's fine. If you're trying to get a point across, you shouldn't use those issues in the examples.
Yep.
And I try to tell this to conservatives, and you can't do it because the emotional catharsis they feel they need by expressing their anxiety over this particular issue is more important to them than actually convincing the other party. So it's really more like, hey, it's more like telling the other person "fuck you" than it is about, or "fuck you and I'm smarter than you," than it is about convincing them. And so I say, just use an historical example or whatever, And then if the other person brings it up, like, well, that's like immigration was, yeah, exactly. Right. But you don't want to lead with something that's basically emotionally cathartic for you, which is really hard because we have a lot of frustrated, angry conservatives and, that want to just get
Rightfully,
their,
I say none, all of it's well earned, because it's like,
it's rightful, right, right,
problem is this is that you're picking up a static charge as you progress through your life, and there's no ability to discharge
right.
because you're picking up the charge that you and it's moral and it's in function and emotional. And so that's what they're trying to properly discharge it, but there's no discharge. So it has to have higher voltage, which is emotional
That's right.
rejection.
And it's just very hard. I know, I have autistic impulses, right? They're very strong. They're like, I want to go into extraordinary detail. I want to talk only about things that matter to me. I don't actually want to listen to you. I want you to absorb my programming. That's actually what's going on in my intuitions. Right. And so,
wait, my superior programming.
well, I know it's the
Wouldn't
thing
be my
is,
programming if it wasn't superior. Sorry to derail you, Curt.
can't argue with it. So,
I know.
so the point being that for me to control those impulses was extremely difficult. To control them long enough that they are just whispers was even harder, because you really have to work at it, right? So now the difference is those impulses in an autistic are loud, right? I mean, they are very aggressive impulses. And so that's why a lot of autists are really frustrating to talk to. It's a monofunctional, etc. Just exasperating. So, but if you try instead to be, I want to be personal, sociable, people to like me, whatever. So I have to learn to do this. You just struck it. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people that need to do that same thing for their impulses, which is just say, okay, I know I want to talk about this because I want to feel remember, because the brain wants Christmas lights to turn on, right? That's what reward is for the brain. And so if you get an interpersonal interaction, which is about the most stimulation persons can have, and you can talk about it for something that's exciting, of which moral outrage is the most exciting, then it's very hard to overcome the urge for your brain to say, give me more, right? Which is what it's doing, and to self-regulate. It's really, really hard. Now that's for a man. Now take it for a woman. When they have almost no ability, because we have compartmentalization, right? That's what makes it possible. So easier for men to observe our observances. But women, it's harder for them because it's just a big fucking chaotic, goddamn cheering crowd in there that they have no way to compartmentalize, and so that it just comes out more easily. The problem is they've also got all the other stuff going on there, which is the prey response. So it comes out in manipulation or just whatever. So it's easy to be understandable. Well, why do people need mindfulness? So they can do that. So they can regulate those internal impulses, and so they can express themselves in a way that benefits communication, collaboration, negotiation, and shared decision making, instead of just emoting. But I mean, I understand you're a young conservative male, or even older one, and you've been eating shit, right? Which is what you were saying. How did you say it? Accumulating static charge, right?
Yes.
And until the point was, you just want to eliminate the static charge. And if somebody gives the opportunity, the release feels so good,
Right.
that it's somewhat addictive. I completely understand it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's just not effective.
Right. And so I'm going to tie this back to my friend Bernie Sanders, man, because it's like this. He's like, he complimented me because it's like that. I can articulate my points very calmly, and it's no problem. And that's what he was complimenting me on that. And it is science. Because I don't I don't accumulate the static charge, because now I can discharge it at will, and it doesn't get rejected.
That's right.
The problem is when you're holding the charge because you can't get it across, you increase the voltage as the emotionality increases, and it's like now it's going to arc like lightning, and it's like, okay, it gets more and more loud and boisterous.
And the people don't listen to you; they dismiss you.
No, then they have to be. Then you're too volatile.
Right. So because partly because they don't understand why you would be so agitated about this. But I'm like, well, because I see the things you don't. It's like if I lived in the world, just to take the humorous metaphor, if I would lived in the world of the sixth sense, and I'm like, I'm walking around, I'm seeing dead people, and you don't. I mean, I'm living a way more stressful world than you do, right? But I see intertemporal consequences and systemic consequences, and you don't. And you only see empathic consequences, or empathic and anyway, interpersonal or social consequences. Then you're not systematizing it, and so you're blind. And so if I see ghosts, right, and you don't see the ghosts, and then I think you're fucking stupid because you don't see the ghosts. But the truth is, you can't see the ghosts. And furthermore, you look at me and say, you're fucking nuts. There's no such thing as ghosts. Well, that's exactly what's happening between the masculine and feminine minds. It's the same thing in all morals, is that conservatives can vaguely understand left wings, the leftists' emotions and morals, intuitions. But it's because they're just a few things. They're very simple. Whereas conservatives have the entire spectrum of emotions and morals. And so the leftists, the feminine, they can't see those other emotions and morals. Matter of fact, they may see them as inhibitions on their freedom to consume. Right. And so loyalty, for example, purity, hierarchy, these things are important, right? They're important for organizing people systematically at large scales. But if you're just an equalitarian and you want people to feel happy and non-stressful and in non-conflict, what you want is everybody to be the same.
Yep.
Which is death.
Everybody's the same after that.
Because if all organisms are the same, computational sphere is limited, and any defect that enters the gene pool, of course, that's negative, will kill everybody. But if you look at it the other way, is that we want to have a normal distribution that within which we can find cooperation, then we're calculating the optimums across the greater scope of space and time, and we're not as vulnerable to infections, whether they're mental or not. Unfortunately, we seem to be disproportionately more vulnerable to the infections of the female means of deception than we wish we were.
Our system failed.
Yeah.
That's all.
Anyway.
It's been failed for hundreds of years. And that's okay. This is the consequence of it.
We can fix it.
It's just an error.
Yeah, I know, but when you're on the part of people who are ghost blind, so to speak, temporal blind,
right?
And your moral register is only for harm care, basically taking care of infants and children and other people who are in the margins, then you perceive all these demands for loyalty, hierarchy, purity, as reciprocity, proportionality instead of equality. Proportionality, right? They're okay with proportionality, but they want to see equality, and we want to see proportionality. Because we want to see meritocracy, because that's what's going to keep the group alive. Everything else is decay. So all women's instincts are actually negative. They're only valuable for children. They're actually destructive at any other scale. So how do you convince that person? You can't.
You're not trying to convince them.
Well, I mean, that's what democracy says, though.
You forgot the hysterical part, though, too. And the other issue is they don't see ghosts, but they can chant them into being.
Well, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Because they make ghosts out of this summoning demon thing.
I was trying to use ghosts because well, I thought it was a good example, and it tied back into your witches and warlocks and spirits and demons.
They see them. They see them, and they're not. They see figments and phantoms that aren't real, and they respond to them. That's the demons that are functioning.
Oh, I see. So
They're chanted into being.
so they imagined. Yeah, I see. So I used a bad analogy then.
It's
But
okay.
anyway,
It's analog instead of testimony, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, I was trying to find an analogy for color blindness is the one I usually use,
Pretty
right?
good.
It's like they can't see they can't see the difference between the colors, right? Well, it's just they can't see the difference between this. They can't see the systems and the consequences over time, and they can't see the distribution and variation of behavior as people make trade-offs. They just think, and this is why they always like monopolies and power, is because they want everybody to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, I mean, it's actually childlike, really. It's a child's view of the world, which is what a woman's view of the world is, because it needs to be somewhat like that in order to not throw children off the fucking cliff, or bury them, leave them out and expose them and whatever.
You have an advanced AI watching your cussing, just so you know.
I don't know what it's. I don't know how to pull it up here. See, I know there's a way to make it show apps. I don't know. We'll see what it says when it.
All right, we'll just wait for the report.
I got a feeling I haven't got it fully installed correctly yet, but we'll see. It looks like it's working up there in the corner. So, all right. So, have we done our job today, and tomorrow we're going to work?
Yeah, I like that plan.
Yeah, you like that?
I think we did a good job. We covered some very interesting topics.
Yeah, I'm going to work on my speech this afternoon.
Very good.
Good. Not in the mind for it, unfortunately, but I'm going to have to do it.
I think it's lunchtime for you.
It is lunchtime. It's 12:40. It's time. I'm going to make. I don't know what I'm going to make. I hope I unfroze some meat, or else I'm in trouble. Anyway, all right.
We'll catch you tomorrow, and
do your thing. Do your thing.
I was gonna get there.
Oh, okay.
There's a like button. Please hit it, and the subscribe button. You could hit that one if you really want to know what's going on, and the notification bell. That is always awesome. But the most important thing is comments. Bring them down.
We like your comments. All right, love you all. I hope this was entertaining for you. As usual, the best way to listen to us is just driving around in the car, or or while you're doing something else. Most of the people who really like these things do it while they're doing they watch them or listen to them while they're doing some other form. Sure. And that's the forum that these discussions are meant for. It's just a couple of guys in a bar or in a living room talking about all the stuff we're doing. All right, love you all. What?
Just advertise our little meeting.
We have a November coming up very soon, November 10th, 11th, 12th.
Yeah.
Right, 10th, 11th, 12th. We are meeting. We have our fall conference for 2023. We got a whole bunch of speakers. We've got a good number of people coming. It's not too big. We're not trying to have like 1 million people at this. We're trying to keep it personal so we can talk to everybody, have relationships. Almost everybody's coming.
Cool.
From around all the important folk from around the world, right? And so we're pretty excited. So we will be videoing it for those people who don't come. But the reason to come to these things is to make relationships that tend to last a lifetime. So that's the real reason. And we almost every time we do that, we get together, we develop lasting relationships with everybody there. All right. Love you all. Love you, Dr. Brad.
Thanks, Curt.
Let's talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Sure.